Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this webinar that we're putting out today. Here at Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems, we do a great job at fitting together some of the thermal cameras and the use of those thermal cameras onto some of the drones out there using such drones as the DJI M600, the Inspire. We created a few different kits to incorporate that into the systems. Probably the biggest important thing here is that the FLIR VUE, which was created to be integrated into these UAS systems, is a pretty good standalone unit. We're able to basically take that FLIR VUE Pro, incorporate it into the actual drone use, and we can control it. We can set up a couple of different receivers and transmitters and different things. So follow along with us today, and we'll go ahead and touch base about a little bit of the operation of the FLIR VUE Pro. So if you haven't seen already, this is kind of what that looks like. On the left side of this, we can see that we have a USB connection and Pwm Inputs. On the other side, you have the SD card as well as the Bluetooth module that the Bluetooth button that lets us know that Bluetooth is turned on, and then we have a record button also on this side. The lenses come in various sizes. We have 640 and 336 in resolution, but we're able to see in different lens sizes the 9mm, the 13mm, and the 19mm. Again, resolutions are different here between 336 and 640. Those are the two main resolutions within that camera. So in comparative to the XT as well as the others, we have that ability to get the same image off of there. So let's take a look at some of the other connections that we can hook up. Module that FLIR came out with. You can take your FLIR, you're going to connect that right there into the USB. It's a sidecar unit that up on the top has a USB for power, because you do have to individually power this, and then an HDMI out, a micro HDMI out. The micro HDMI is good for putting in, connecting it to such ships when fixed mounted to the Solo. So the Solo, for an example, has an HDMI in only. This little unit added to here can basically push out an HDMI feed. You do have to provide power through the USB. What's really nice about that is that the camera itself through the USB can only handle 5 volts. If you get 5.5 volts, any higher than that, you can damage the camera. Nice thing about this unit, besides it pumping out an HDMI, is the ability to run up to 26 volts into this little unit. So you can connect it up to other units and power it from the main batteries and not hurt or destroy the camera. So that's another awesome little unit. These retail for $100. You buy that with your camera. If needed, you have an HDMI solution that you can sidecar onto the side of the FLIR VUE Pro. So what we really wanted to try to discuss was our Raptor gimbal. So did we have any other questions there? Number 3? Question number 3 there.
Oh, you want to launch?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at question number 3. So this is just kind of a general question for RMUS before we moved on to the actual gimbal, but what service products that we provide is most important to your company? And we have a couple of different answers there. Customization, so being able to do things to the camera, or the systems that we are, you currently own and Inspire, and what can we do to accommodate trying to get one of these FLIR VUE Pros onto that. Obviously customer service is a very important one. We have training. If training availability is awesome. Some people, again, with the thermal expertise, have no idea exactly how thermal works. For an example, I got a call yesterday on one of the XT ARs, and that one was a kind of an interesting question when the guy had got some very unrelative temperatures, and again, when explaining how thermal actually works, he was unaware of how it is. It's definitely not a point and shoot camera. You do have to set up the camera. In some cases, even with the FLIR VUE Pro, you take an image, SD card is ready to go. You're going to pull that out, open up FLIR tools, do an evaluation, or do a setup so that you can actually mess with FLIR VUE tools, change some of the parameters and stuff like that. So really important that we have an understanding of thermal in general.
We have a couple questions.
Okay, let's go ahead and hit a couple questions here.
Okay, so Grayson, what's the benefit of using this versus the FLIR XT?
So Grayson asks a good question. What is the benefit of using a FLIR VUE Pro versus an XT, which I have right here? Number one that usually comes up in advantage is this is $4,500 on the radiometric version. This is $14,000 on the radiometric version. You step back and go to a non-radiometric, you're talking $12,000, and this one would be $3,600. So that's a huge one for most people that have not very much understanding within the FLIR, how it works, what it is, the difference between the two. Some people can't justify buying this. They want to try thermal, they're going to try something like this. As far as operation goes, really, really important here. The XT has been integrated into your Inspire, into the M100, into the M600. The operation of it, some of the things you can choose, taking pictures, between pictures and video, all of this it's all more about user interface here and the ability that DJI and FLIR have put together the software, firmware capability to be able to do that. That's really where the cost comes in. Here's the one thing. The image off of these two cameras, if this was a 649mm, this was a 649mm, are exactly the same. So once you take a picture on here and it's saved on the SD card, take a picture here and saved on the SD card, the information is the same, the image is the same, everything is the same. We're using a Tau 2 core that looks exactly the same, they operate the same. But the advantage here is being able to just hot swap this onto the Inspire, operation-wise, dual camera setup. I mean, there's a lot of neat things that are capable of why the XT is so much more expensive. But as far as the image, exactly the same. So running it through the DJI Go app is a real big bonus. It's a little bit more difficult to run this through the DJI Go app, even though we have figured out how to do so. So it really does come down to cost. As far as the images go, like I said, what you can analyze with, give to your customers, actually show thermal radiometric data, exactly the same. So, next question.
Okay, Chris wants to know, can the lenses be changed?
Chris wants to know if the lenses can be changed. That is a negative. So, once you buy a lens, you're stuck with the lens. Why is that? Because the lenses are a specially calibrated within the factory of FLIR to go ahead and set these up exactly how they need to be. That calibration can take upwards of 8 to 12 hours just to do the calibration once changing the lens out. Dollar-wise, as far as FLIR is concerned, it's actually costing them more money to go ahead and calibrate this, set it up, ready to go with a 13mm lens than it does to grab another camera and put a 9mm lens on it. So they are fixed lenses. You can use a tool that FLIR has available to focal change or focus a little bit better, but you have to also be very careful with that you don't damage the sensor on the inside in doing so. So that's something that you can order from FLIR that you can change just a little bit of where it focuses to, but basically you have an infinity range, field of view that's already set up at whatever millimeter that you order. But no, unfortunately, you cannot change the lenses, and they just don't recommend it. It's sometimes way too costly to try and do it as well. So, because of the recalibration that has to happen. Any other further questions, Jacob?
Yeah, let's see. Drew wants to know if the units have picture-in-picture.
Drew wants to know if there is the capability of running picture-in-picture. As far as it just coming off of this, no. What will happen would be if you have an AV signal that comes out of this into a Inspire, or I'm sorry, into an M600 which runs Lightbridge 2, yes, we're able to do picture-in-picture. So it's not that the camera is not capable of doing it. We're just pulling an image off one camera, then we're going to pull an image off another camera, and it's the light bridge that's going to be able to decide which one it's going to do. But we'll demonstrate that today, that we are actually able to do a picture-in-picture capability right here back on this one. It has an X5 on there as well as a FLIR VUE. One is running through the EXT port, the other one is running through the AV port. So good question, but it's really not about the actual camera being able to do picture-in-picture. It's more about the ship, the video signals, or the video connections and stuff like that on whether you can do picture-in-picture. Any other questions there?
I think we're good for now.
Okay, good for now. So let's move on to the Raptor. The Raptor was a specially designed gimbal to carry the FLIR VUE Pro. And basically when you order that, it comes in a nice little GP case if you combo it with a camera. So if we open this guy up, we have a nice little GPC, and thank you again for GPC to be able to make a awesome, and they did a great job with the way it's all cut out and set up. But when you buy this comboed with a camera, you're going to get this case. Just really awesome packaging, that's really all it is, but because it's an awesome case, you can use it for other things also. In the case, we basically have the gimbal. The gimbal is set up to go ahead and have the FLIR VUE. We are able to do 2 Pwm inputs at this time. In the future, we'll be able to do 4 Pwm inputs on the camera. Again, what are Pwm inputs? The camera is capable of listening to a receiver that you can connect up, which we'll show today, and change a few features while live or flying around on the FLIR VUE Pro. And we're able to run that through the gimbal. So that comes with that. For some of the mounting systems that are out there, we're going to get this little mount. We can mount that on the top of the gimbal, and then that's for most of the rail mounts that are out there, just kind of a generic mount. But up on the top, we have multiple holes and multiple setups. The way I did this one was being able to use an X5 plate, mounted it up on the top, then I'm able to just use it here on the M600. So the top plate can be changed, manufactured, whatever you want to do on the top plate to accommodate that to whatever ship you want. And we'll be able to have some solutions for the Inspire where you can mount this up to the Inspire and all of that. Also in the box, you would have, you're getting some zip ties to zip tie any cables down, and then the wire harness that would come with that in order to connect it to PWM and power source for the actual whole gimbal. So you can provide up to 17 volts on this, down to 7 volts. So 7 to 17 volts on this gimbal, which does power the FLIR, and as well it will power the whole gimbal and everything else. So you have the ability to run a couple of voltage ranges here, 2 cell to 4 cell if you want to do that. You can run BECs, basically what I've got kind of set up back here if needed. You can run a BEC system, battery eliminating circuit, if nobody knows what that is, to be able to drop your voltage down to an operable voltage gimbal can handle. We do have PWM inputs, if anybody is familiar with those. So those are just receiver input connectors, standard Futaba stuff or JR stuff. We can connect that into a Tyrannus. We can do whatever we want to there so that we can control the gimbal, around, move it, change your PWMs. So that's this. It comes in this nice little case, like I said. We put everything back in here. We'll bring it out. We'll bring a test stand that I have ready and available to kind of show you how it functions on a standard RC setup that is kind of a Frankendrone setup is what we call it. So build your own, set up your own. You've got your own stuff. You can actually run it. So let's take a look at that. Grab this real quick. Okay. Alright, so on our Frankendrone setup, they have a simple black pearl here that normally you'd be receiving, but we're just hard lined with the video signal out. We have a standard receiver, and we're using a Tyrannus to do any changes and whatever on the actual gimbal. So when we have the Tyrannus set up, we can use the Tyrannus, which is pretty sweet, this particular radio system, to both operate the drone as well as possibly operate a gimbal. These have sliders on the side and stuff like that. If we take this system and put it on an Inspire, we would most likely have to run. We most likely would have to do that. Could yelling at me thing. We would most likely have to set that up so that we basically have the ability to, again, move it around everywhere we want to go. Of course, you're yelling at me. Good to go. So we have the gimbal movement up and down, left and right. And then we have the ability to change some of the color palettes or change some of the settings within. So these are our PWM controlled. And then we have a digital zoom here set up. So I have two PWM controls here with digital zoom. And as well as color palette change. And additionally, we're able to move the gimbal and move it around however we'd like to go. This is capable of not full 360, but can pretty much rotate all the way around. And the modes in the gimbal, which are pretty cool, we can actually set the modes so that we can change so that you only have an up and down only, no left and right. We can lock the thing so it doesn't move it around, but it will follow the drone. So that's pretty cool. And the last mode is being able to put it in whatever position we want to, and then the drone can actually move, and it actually stays stationary and still. So that's actually the other mode. So it's almost like the free mode in a DJI gimbal. So we can set it up to free mode, so it doesn't matter where the gimbal is pointing and going, that we can keep it like that in that position. So a couple of different mode operations on there. We do have the PDF file set up on the website to be able to pull some of the information on the RMUS gimbal in connecting and setting this up on a build like this. From there, you can develop it and move it forward to be able to do incorporation onto other stuff, and that's basically what we'll talk about next. So, another poll question?
Yeah.
So we just had a couple of questions here, and this just gives us a general idea on what a lot of people want to try to put the gimbal on. Some of the issues and problems we've had with being able to incorporate it into a DJI setup. But if we wanted to use the RMUS gimbal, what kind of drone are we going to stick it on? I mean, we want to use the Inspire, the M600, anything with a Phantom, 3DR Solo, or other types of systems. The only thing that would really honestly change between any of these would be how we mounted the bird, and whether or not we need to use the Taranis radio or a separate RC radio to control the gimbal. We get a lot of questions there to see if they can use the Lightbridge radio or one of the other radios that the Inspire has, so the second camera operator. And unfortunately, we have not been able to do that. I don't think any companies have in the way of just having something simple and easy to connect up. But what is kind of cool when connecting it to an Inspire is that you can have the HDMI out feed, so your second operator still would be able to connect our Inspire Raptor combo as soon as I get that one done. Control, but you've got an HDMI feed coming from the main Pilot, so you have Pilot radio, HDMI feed out to a Black Pearl. That would be outputting an HDMI, and this guy would still be controlling and running the FLIR on one of the Black Pearl or any HDMI inputted screen. So thank you for answering that question and showing, again, we just kind of want to have a general idea on which way to go. Not everybody has every single solution available, but we want to kind of focus a little bit. It's possible that we're going to have the Inspire coming soon, so hopefully nothing has changed much in that setup that once people are wanting the Inspire 2, we can do that. I do get another common question of having two cameras, gimbaled cameras on the bottom of an Inspire, because that is a very, the Inspire is an awesome ship, one of my all-time favorites. Mine alone has over 1,000 flights on it. I have another one that has about 270 on it, and never has been wrecked. I just barely changed the props on one, so it's a great, great ship, no doubt a great ship. But it still has its limitations of being able to carry a whole bunch of stuff. So X3 on the front, FLIR Raptor RMUS gimbal on the back, carrying all the weight, transmitting it all through. It can be kind of a difficult situation. But if we're able to take that FLIR VUE and move it up into the front, take off the X3, we're still able to do some cool functions and capability and run the FLIR VUE Pro through the GoPro app. We just have to, again, control it with a second operator radio.
Grayson has a question.
Grayson, what do you got?
I was told by FLIR that the VUE Pro is the second of the XT from the sensor standpoint.
So from FLIR, again, this is Jon McBride in thermal, kind of explaining this. It's not, the sensor is not less or more. The sensor is very similar, if not the same. The FLIR VUE Pro has the same sensor, and they're using the same core. But when you're talking about an advanced radiometric versus a not advanced radiometric version, XT, advanced 14,000, a radiometric version now capable, that they're the same, very similar, if not the same. So what they could have been referring to before the radiometric version of the FLIR VUE Pro was, yes, that was the advanced radiometric was more than capable of doing radiometric stuff, but now that's a new thing. So I don't know if that was recent, Grayson. But again, that's the information is the same, and the capability is the same. So the operational side of things is really all that's different, but the images are going to be the same. Radiometric FLIR VUE Pro, radiometric capability, or advanced radiometric on the XT. Drop it down to the standard XT and standard FLIR VUE Pro. Those are still going to be the same also. You just don't have the specific radiometric data that gives it the sensitivity that is needed to do actual temperature sensing. So, good question. Anything else, Jacob?
That's it for now.
That's it for the questions?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're at 11:30 right now my time, so about half an hour in. Let's show you a couple of cool things about trying to get this pushing through the DJI Go app and what we kind of done to resolve that issue. I've posted a few videos in some of the Facebook groups and how the connection works and what's going on. But basically, we created the ability to take an M600, which again uses the LightBridge 2. The LightBridge 2 has got 3 main inputs on video. One being the EXT. The EXT is used by the X5 series cameras, so any of the X5, the X mount series cameras rather, so the X5, the XT, the X3, all of that runs through the EXT port. The ZenMuse also runs through the ZXT, so any of the Z15 products, so if you're going to do Z15 A7 combo, that all runs through the EXT port also. So when you are doing large cameras or large systems where you're running a RED, those are likely going to be pumping an HDMI out. Canon, Barry Blanchard uses a Canon quite often, so he's got his setup on the Ronin. That's going to use an HDMI through the HDMI port on the LightBridge 2, and the any other cameras that are mounted to the actual MX Ronin are going to be using the HDMI. You can use an EXT, which we've got here. Basically, the X5 is running through an EXT, but you can run a GoPro up on the top of the M600 and run that through the HDMI feed and be able to get both feeds at the same time. So it would be picture-in-picture on your HDMI out only. DJI Go app does not do picture-in-picture through the DJI Go app. You can choose which one you want to look at, but you can't do both. And then the last one would be the AV input on the M600 LB2. So the AV input can do FPV camera. In this case, we're using it and pushing the Raptor FLIR VUE camera through it. So it's running through the AV, and we're able to run the EXT. So earlier we had the Z3 on here. I took a picture of that, put that on Facebook. And the Z3 and the FLIR image was both running at the same time. And so what we're able to do is basically run the FLIR image, and we have gimbal operation on the bottom. Let's flip this thing all the way around. I know it's a little bit hard to see just because it's far away. But there's Jacob, there's me. And we're pushing this through the AV input. So AV design, this will be a ready-to-go kit that I'll be able to, that I'll make both out of the FLIR VUE Pro or FLIR VUE. Cannot do Pwm Inputs on a FLIR VUE, but the gimbal does work with the FLIR VUE, not the Pro version. But we'll take the FLIR VUE Pro. I'll have a kit already made that you can just mount to this, connections. It runs off of the ship's power, so everything will just be a very simple disconnected design. So there won't be anything that is needed to do that, which will work really well. So we've got that going right now as far as the FLIR image coming through here off of a FLIR VUE Pro and not an XT. $12,000. This combo is probably going to be at the high end, $6,000. So quite a difference in price. What we're able to do again is go ahead and grab another Tyrannus. We can take an HDMI because we're going to use this as the second camera operator portion. We'll take an HDMI that's coming out of the main radio, put on our HDMI screen. We're semi-connected right there, but we're able to, again, run both camera outputs at the same time. So right now I'm running through the FLIR. Let's change it over to the other. If we go through and change the HD, do we have a question?
You have a question from Jason. Do you guys have the AV cable needed to do an analog FPV camera without an N1 encoder?
One more time.
So do you guys have the AV cable needed to do an analog FPV camera without an N1 encoder?
I will show you that there's actually, so Grayson asked if we can get the cable that usually runs the AV, the N1 decoder cable. I'll tell you, there's a couple of cheater ways to do that real quick. Phantom 3 has a part, I believe it's the Phantom 3 part 08. That has the cable in there. It's like $9. Do we make the cable? We don't make the cable. I usually just order that part and then I modify the cable. But don't quote me on the part 08 though, Grayson. So that could be a simple. It is what they call a Molex GH cable that is connected there. So and then it's a 3-pin output. The light bridge, I had to get my own cable for that. That's not one that came with the M600 light bridge combo. The light bridge, if you bought it by itself, you can get that. But Grayson, just email me or whatever, and I can show you some of the cables that are available out there to modify that are fairly cheap. You don't have to buy a whole cable kit. Question?
Yeah, so Nick wants to know about the color palette control.
Okay, Nick, good question. So Nick is asking about the color palette control. We are running it through basically, again, a Tyrannus setup. The Tyrannus is capable or doing 3 color palette choices. XT can do all 9. I think they even added another 2. XT can do all of them. When running through this and the PWM on a FLIR VUE, you can choose 3 that are capable of running off of a switch. And we'll go through that real quick. But what I wanted to show you was basically we have the standard X5 coming through. Kind of a bugger to show this. Let me get on this side just a little bit. So we have the standard coming through. If we just go back to HD, we're able to pull up the LB. And once we go to the LB, the light bridge, basically, now we've got FLIR image coming through. If we connected this up to an HDMI screen, which I think I probably could do that real quick, and choose a picture-in-picture option, we can do that. But, let's see here. But we have to tell the application, the DJI Go app, to actually do that, is to output an HDMI and additionally run. So here, we're running right here, let me get out of the way. We're running the X5 feed, HDMI connected to the back of the controller, and we have the FLIR feed running through here. In order to control the FLIR feed, we need a separate RC radio. We can move that around. We can do whatever we need to do there. But the Pilot still has the capability of touching the screen here. We can, if we get even more complicated, add another LB2 system that actually has another screen, the iPad and everything else. So it's kind of a short time to explain how this all works, but I'll most likely make a video for this whole system and everything, how it works and what you need to do it. And this is, again, including the RMUS gimbal, the Raptor gimbal. So we're showing through the HDMI output here. Let's, just because I think it was it Grayson that asked for the picture-in-picture? Or was it it was asking for picture-in-picture. That's the back seat of my chair, so it's not as exciting right there. But if we're able to go into the Go app, we're actually able to pull up the HDMI output feed. And the output has the capability of deciding whether or not you want to do picture-in-picture or not. So if the output mode right now is set to EXT, remember, EXT is what? The X5 mounts, the Zemus Z15 mounts, any of those are being pushed through the EXT port on the Lightbridge 2. So if we choose that, we can actually choose picture-in-picture EXT. Let's hope that pushes through here in just a second. It does take a minute, I do notice that. So let's get this a little bit close. So we have the standard image behind us. That's me on the seat down there in the bottom left corner. And then we have the FLIR image on the other. We can switch it real quick. So, and this is again being controlled by the pilot side, if you haven't noticed that. So if we switch it, now we've got the FLIR down on the bottom, and then we have the back seat of my chair, the back of the chair being shown. So we can see that working. So hopefully that in the picture-in-picture, again, we have two different video feeds coming through on the DJI Go app. Lightbridge 2 is required to do this. You cannot do this on an Inspire that uses the Lightbridge 1. You cannot do this on an M100 currently. Only on the Lightbridge 2. So an A3 combo, Lightbridge 2, put it on whatever system you want, or you can use it on the M600. So we're pushing it through the M600 right now. If I was to take this, and again, we have the whole setup going. I mount this right here. I'm able to use, the pilot is able to see all of that, and he would just tell the main pilot, hey, I want to be able to see the FLIR VUE image. Boom, it pulls up the FLIR VUE Pro image. I want to see the standard image. Boom, it pulls that. But this guy will be controlling the FLIR camera, and this guy would be controlling the EXT or the X5 or XT or X3 mount. So just coming into our HD settings, and we change back the pilot being able to see the EXT. And hopefully that doesn't give us too much trouble doing that. So we have the EXT, and even though you're not running two radios, unless you add this to the mix for the camera operator, and you can actually control the gimbal up and down, left and right. You can do that with the EXT. We just don't have a feed rolling through here, but basically I can still control the X5, X3, whatever gimbal on the second remote, or with a lot of people, they just touch the screen like the old Inspire and move the gimbal around to wherever they want to go. So that's kind of how this system works, running through the M600. That's how the Raptor was designed and capable of outputting, so that we can both, push it through AV signals, transpose it over to HDMI if needed, but AV actually does have a much easier system. Nick, you asked about the color palette changes. Good question there. Let's answer that real quick on how we do that. And that's running through the FLIR VUE Pro. Remember, we're using the FLIR VUE Pro for this. If we pick the HDMI LB on the main, so now we're back to the main. I'm able to move the gimbal around with the thing. We can see that moving around. Move this just a little bit closer. And I'm able to change color palettes on 3 different color palettes I have set up. Like I said, I can do 3. So depending on where I want to point that thing. On here, I've also got this set up to do, let me point this to a more capable position where you can actually see something. There's all of our remotes. There's the back of my head. There's me. So we can change the color palette. We can see that happening. And then the other PWM input that I have set up on here is starting and stopping recording. So there's the beep. One more time with the beep. So that PWM that we've got for the 2 that we can control is again color palette, and the other choice that I chose was to start and stop recording. So that's the 2 things that I've got. There's Jacob. Jacob's butt's really warm, if you can see that. Off. Okay, so that, again, for Nick, being able to change the color palettes, that is usually one option that everybody wants. We're able to do 2 on the gimbal right now. I was able to do 4 Pwm inputs, so I could do a couple other things, but you can only choose 3 color palettes, any of the color palettes, but you're going to assign it to whatever switch position, and again, you only have 3 that you can choose from, but that's still better than just 1. So, do we have a question?
Yep. Douglas wants to know if the Phantom 4 runs the Lightbridge 2. Have you worked with connecting the VUE Pro on the P4?
Very good question. So the reason why, okay, so the question was, have I messed with, have I done anything with the P4? The P4 is a great machine. Taking the camera off and putting another camera on is very difficult with a P4 and a P3. I did modify a P2, which is a lot easier to get into. We can fly the whole damn P2 off of a Tyrannus. The whole thing can be run off of there. My gimbal, the Raptor gimbal, can be operated off the Tyrannus. So we're able to do a lot of things. But the P3 and the P4, pulling off the cameras or trying to run a feed through those, they use a Lightbridge 2 also, like you say, but there's no inputs anywhere to do AV. There's no setups there. And to take the camera off and try to figure that one out has always been a difficulty. I do get that question a lot. That's why I was asked why I asked you in the poll questions and put Phantom series in the thing, because I want to know how many people really try to do that. I don't want to say no, we're not doing it, but we do have an example from Drone Experts out of the Netherlands. We brought that system in. It puts a FLIR VUE Pro on the back, not running through the Go app, only running, basically transmitting, like picking it up with a Black Pearl on 5.8, but it made it really, really heavy, and my flight time was 9 minutes max. So 2 cameras, 2 gimbals, 2 setups, small little Phantom. I don't recommend it. You can sidecar it. And do a hard mount rather than a full gimbal mount. But currently, I don't have a great solution for the P4, and I don't know if it would be, again, capable of carrying all the weight and making it worth your while. So that's the biggest problem with using the Phantom series. Next question, Jacob.
Yeah, Nick wants to know, can we pick the 3 color palettes out of the 9 or 11 that are available? Yes.
So Nick asked the question, are we able to pick any of the color palettes throughout the 9? Yes, you can pick whatever ones. What I didn't really discuss was the Bluetooth capability, and we'll just talk about that for just 30 seconds here. We can use an app. There's an app that's Bluetooth capable. You can preset all of the things that you want to do on the FLIR VUE Pro. Once connected to the app, Bluetooth is running. You figure out the parameters and setups and everything else, which we are able to help you with, so if you need to. But any of the color palettes are available on that app. You can pick 3 of them, and you can tell the PWM which 3 you want to run. So good question, Nick. But at the same time, running it through the app and controlling it, Bluetooth is on. I highly recommend. So we have, I can change parameters. I can change color palettes real quick on here. Doesn't take very long to do so, but I always turn the Bluetooth system off when changing and doing any setup parameters on the FLIR VUE. So Bluetooth is just like Bluetooth on the GoPro. You can connect to it, but the application doesn't push any kind of feed or video through it. It's just for setting up the camera. So good question, Nick. Okay. So the other thing that we wanted to discuss real quick, and so that kind of a little bit about how the Raptor gimbal works. The Raptor is, again, designed to run the FLIR VUE or the FLIR VUE Pro. We have options, we have capability, we have different things. We set it up here on the Franken drone. You can put it on anything, run it through a Tyrannus. We can run it through the M600 with a separate radio, so that's pretty sweet. But the other thing that we wanted to discuss a little bit was the crew view. So I created a system. It's not. It'll be kind of a production system, but the crew view was designed to basically share this image to other people that were not connected to the actual system. I did notice that there was a I believe, I can't, FPV 3D or something like that, had come out with a new Wi-Fi connection, so you can basically emulate what's on here to another device. I don't know what the range was. That was just something I recently seen within the last like few days, but it kind of answered that question of what if, give you a scenario, I'm piloting the bird and I want to share this feed to somebody using FLIR, search and rescue application, to somebody that has a black pearl or something on the ground. And they're not near me. They could be 2 or 3 miles away from me. Is that possible? The Crew View makes that possible in several different frequencies and several different ways we can do that. So the Crew View is capable of transmitting the feed that comes off of the FLIR, whatever is on the main camera, pumping out in the HDMI source, will be able to basically do that. And you can then, hold on 1 second, I'm going to plug this battery in. So then you're able to do and answer a couple of questions for some of the police guys that call me a lot. I want to be able to show this feed to guys that are in the search area. I want to be able to send this back to my sergeant who is standing, you know, again, 2 miles away next to the command center. Yes, you can do all of that with the Crew View. So that's pretty, it's not anything spectacular. We're just able to make an actual kit that you can choose or use to be able to do that. So if I did a little video again, a little bit in one of my groups that actually showed the Crew View, you know, being transmitted on this. Let's see if we can get that feed up. So we're able to take that same feed that we were looking at before, but instead of being hardwired, we're able to transmit it over a signal and area. So we might get some signal bouncing in here, so that's the reason I've got some lines coming off the screen. But look at that, I got the same thing, the X5, the FLIR. I can then choose on here how I want to see that, and it's the same HDMI out feed here. But the concept here is to be able to take this and go anywhere. As far as range as the antennas will go, this is running 5.8. We can choose 1.3. We can choose 900 megahertz. We can get this little handheld device. How you do it? Black Pearl. Simple input off of a receiver on 1.3. And take this anywhere. We can show people, you know, hey, take this and run up the hill and you'll see what the drone sees. It increases our range. We're able to transmit that back down to a command center. And because we're even just transmitting it in 5.8, the resolution is not that terrible when you're looking at it. So let's go back and actually move that X5 camera around for just a second. And like I said, we might get some signal bouncing here. Why are we not getting okay, I'm backwards. Yeah, I'm totally backwards. Why don't we do it the easy way? Double click the C1, baby. How about C1? So we're able to basically still transmit that video signal, and we do have picture-in-picture available here. We can, again, this will work on, let me just explain this too. This will work on any HDMI output system. So if you've got the HDMI output capability on the P4, the P3, any of those, the Inspire, the M100, any of that, you can transmit the HDMI. It's not, again, it's not a really tricky system. It's just being able to connect that and set that up for other people that are walking around that have that capability. What's really cool right now is I'm working on a wristband so that the screen stays right here, antennas up here, guys are running through the forest. So we have a little bit more of what the drone sees. Communication from helicopter pilots and stuff like that, they're going, hey, turn to your left, turn to your right, that's what you see. But this will be able to basically do that same thing, but you're seeing exactly what the drone pilot is seeing. So that would be very helpful with search and rescue, police, fire, anything like that. Or if you're into cinematic stuff, is that the director doesn't have to be right next to you looking over your shoulder with the other radio system. So that would be another one too. Let's open it up for any other further questions. We've got about, what, 10, 15 minutes here. So let's open it up and see if there's any other specific questions. Phil, don't feel shy. Ask anything. It doesn't matter. I take silly questions, stupid questions, more difficult questions, and I'll do my best. So anything, Jacob?
Yeah, Greg wants to know, Ryan had mentioned gimbal for the FLIR and visual camera side by side is in the works. Any updates?
Okay, so putting two cameras together, and running AV signals. So again, simple explanation of how it works. We actually do have a gimbal set up for doing side-by-side imaging, which this one will be able to do shortly. That is called the, not the Raptor, the Predator. That was called the Predator. The Predator was able to run on the bottom in the Inspire and actually get that set up so that you could run the side-by-side imaging. The problem was the camera that we have to do the standard EO stuff is probably not suitable in what most people wanted to do, but we can still externally control the whole thing. How's that coming along? I'm hoping to see that within the next month and a half. So it's still a little bit farther out, just trying to get the gimbal designed and everything else. So unfortunately, it does take me a little bit of time to come up with a couple of things, create the system, but then getting all of the parts and pieces and everything else and make sure that the quality control and everything else looks good. So good question on there. Double systems, running two separate images. So, and who asked that question?
That was Greg.
Greg. So Greg, if you want to, again, you talked to Ryan about it, but if you wanted to talk to Jon at rmus.com. Jon, Jon, by the way, Jon at rmus.com. If you wanted to get a little bit more idea, I want to know, again, what ship you're using, what type of system you're using. Really easy to do with the double images here, but it's still, you know, knowing how to switch back and forth and what system you want to put it on. So next week, we will be in Vegas, Las Vegas, to do a presentation as well. Have a booth set up for the information show. That's put on by FLIR. Information, we'll send you a link here to information.org, and that's INFRA mation.org. That is actually a great source. Most of the guys that are going to be down there are part of this FLIR. Instead of it being a drone like InterDrone or something like that, it's more about FLIR capable products. Handheld units, flying drone units, that's what we'll be doing a discussion on down there, as well as presentations. But back to your original question of what do I charge? That's a good question. I don't have a specific on that one. Some people do it when they're doing roofing by square footage. Some people just do it by the job. But you can come back and get a hold of me. There's probably, you know, I did create a group in Facebook called FLIR VUE Pro page. If you haven't already joined that, that's actually a really good resource for some of the other thermal imager guys that are throwing in some of those kinds of questions on what do I charge, what do I do, what do I need. So, and then what is the sometimes what does the client expect out of me? And that's always a good question. What do they expect when they see or know thermal? Sometimes the client doesn't even know what they want. So you have to be able to kind of say, this is what I'm capable of doing, and this is what we can do. So next question.
Okay, Drew wants to know, can this be integrated with drone deployed photogrammetry missions, fly a solar farm mission with hundreds of IR images taken?
Okay, good question, Drew. Drew wants to know if we can incorporate this. Basically, what I'm getting out of this question is, can we GPS tag? Are we able to use drone deploy? Are we able to do a couple of things? So, if you missed my last seminar, we kind of talked about the drone deploy does not have a profile set up for the FLIR VUE Pro. And that is, the ship flies a little bit too fast to be able to do thermal imaging and mapping. The other thing about doing mapping is that nobody, except for one company that I'm working with right now, is capable of stitching together a FLIR image. The way I suggest you do it until that develops and creates and comes along, Drew, was it Drew? Did I answer? Okay, Drew. So what I suggest you do is do an ortho of the whole space in standard EO camera, the standard camera. You create a drone deploy ortho of the whole space and in that. Then you go out and you take your FLIR. You fly over some of the more spot-sensitive spaces that you think that need to be done, and you overlay those images into that. You can create a report if you've got radiometric data embedded in that. A part of that, you can create that. but it's really hard to do any major thermal stitching where you're doing large spaces and large areas, 100 acres plus. That's a lot of images that have to be overlaid, and drone deploy right now does not control the speed well enough, as well as sometimes taking the pictures off the camera to do it automated. Some of the other things that happens with FLIR, I don't know if you've ever noticed when FLIR is running. Let me change this output to the standard FLIR. Maybe I can get this to activate. But sometimes you'll see this like pause, and the pause in the image is the shutter inside the camera recalibrating the sensor. That pause can also mess up some of the mapping capability. So is it coming? Yeah. Some people want to turn that off, and in the XT you can turn that off. You can turn that pausing or the calibration of the sensor off. Not recommended to do that for very long. But again, feel free to email me on any of the other questions, or give me a call here on if I can get a little bit more in detail on that. This is the FLIR VUE Pro is capable of running with the MAVLink system. I am currently working with the engineer down there, but they're also in the instructional thing. They talked about working with MAVLink. MAVLink is Pixhawk stuff and whatnot. You can run it with that to GPS tag. So hopefully I'll have a solution for GPS tagging at least coming up.
So Victor wants to know which camera would be recommended for a transmission tower inspection and a power line inspection.
Okay, so Victor wants to know power line inspections and high voltage is usually the case is running high voltage. I typically recommend a 19mm 640. If you can do a 19mm 336, that's fine too. But remember, what we just learned today is that the field of view will change just a little bit between the resolutions, even though the millimeter of lens is the same. So why the 19mm on doing high-power transmissions on my recommendation? That's Jon McBride's recommendation. Because, again, sometimes high-power transmission lines create a lot of RF energy. A lot of that RF energy can mess with the drone. So being able to stay away but keeping the field of view small allows us to fly at a space that's not as close to doing the imagery on the actual high-power tension lines. So most of the time, staying away from them is really important. And the drone can kind of get some issues, GPS connections, RF connections, that doesn't have anything to do with the image, but can mostly control of the drone. So not everything is capable of not being interfered by that RF energy that comes off of high-power transmission lines, but I recommend having a lens that can see to keep its distance away. I have a friend of mine that does pole inspections out in Colorado. In order to even start to do that work with the power companies, a minimal insurance package is $10 million is the minimum amount of insurance needed to do any high-power tension lines where he's at. So he has to have a $10 million policy in order to do any inspection, and I just told him it'd be recommended to stay away from the things and not whack them. Not like the drone's going to hurt them, but you never know. You arc one of those things out, and it'd be a lot of trouble. So I recommend the higher millimeter lens, 19mm for power line inspections. You can drop back to the 13. You can even use the 9, but that'll be relative to how close the drone needs to be able to see those insulators or see some of the connectors or anything like that. So any other questions there, Jacob?
That's all we got for questions.
That's all we got for questions. Hey guys, I wanted to again thank you very much for joining me. Please send any feedback, any questions, any things that we might need to cover the next time. Hopefully we've explained enough about the FLIR VUE Pro, its capability, the Raptor Gimbal and its capability, as well as we covered the crew view. So anytime you want to be able to shoot any of the questions to us, that'd be very helpful. Just any of the products that we have. Join our Facebook group. That's usually where we're doing our Facebook page. That's where we do our announcements on the next webinar, which I believe is scheduled next month. Do you remember the date, Jacob? The date of the next webinar? Okay, it's coming next month. So we try to do these monthly. We'll be talking about a couple of other systems that we'll be coming out with, and then some of the other things that we're currently working on. So thank you again for joining us today. Again, I'm Jon McBride, Rockstar Thermal UAV guy. So thanks, guys.